we got the great Foolish Baseball. Bailey's got a great YouTube channel actually too. Met him out at the winter meeting. So thank you so much for hopping on.
Hey, thanks for having me. I just finished doing a podcast with someone I met at the winter meeting so I could hop on with you and do another podcast with someone I met at the winter meetings.
Yeah, the meetings were crazy. It was just like a whirlwind of events. It was really cool to network and meet people like you. And now we're getting all this podcasting in. So the Arson Judge is obviously going to go down in history in those meetings. But what was something else to you that stood out for the meetings?
When you're hanging around, the bar is like sort of the apex of it all. Like there's so much action and interaction going on there. And, I remember just hanging out there and just at any given moment, you just look around the room and, you see people that if you saw them in your day-to-day life, it would be like the absolute highlight of your day. Like I met Rajay Davis at winter meetings. If that happened to me, when I was back home living in Atlanta, Georgia, that would be like the greatest thing that ever happened. And he was just another face in the crowd. And so, you look around, I saw Kyle Tucker at the bar. I saw Mike Rizzo at the bar. I saw Kim Ng at the bar. I saw Aaron Boone at the bar. So it's just, it's just kind of crazy to, see how much, gets done and how much interacting and networking just happens in that one very small area of the hotel, especially once we get later into the night.
Yeah, it's incredible. It was my second time, my first credentialed time, but I do know this exactly what you're talking about. Like I saw Howie Kendrick, like CC Sabathia, like we got an interview with Nelson Cruz. Like this is all a bunch of cool stuff. And you have GMs, you have managers, like it's just like the center of baseball. You're trying to decipher what's true and what isn't, all the reporters. And I didn't even know Kyle Tucker was there. Like so many players showed up we weren't even expecting. Like, yeah, it was just a wild scene.
And it was my first winter meetings and also my first credentialed winter meeting. So it was interesting for me as well in the sense that I was able to sort of cash in on a lot of the stuff I've been building purely through the internet, especially in, 2020 and 2021 when there was no in-person winter meetings. And so I showed up there and it was my first time going, but I, in a way, had cut the line and I was, I had people there that I knew and I wasn't like, say the job seekers, the people who are just trying to get their first break in the industry.
Was me in 2019.
Right. And I really enjoyed talking to them as well, because I think they're just, they are so courageous, because I would have just been terrified to be in their position. I think they all handled it really well.
I agree. It was definitely overwhelming in 2019. Like I didn't know nearly as many people. Like I've made some good connections with reporters and some people as well. But it's just a fascinating scene and there's so many different perspectives of it too. So what led me to you is obviously your YouTube channel. So I'm curious how you got that started and what was your baseball inspiration growing up?
Yeah, so I don't remember a time in my life where I wasn't a baseball fan. I grew up, mostly in Georgia to parents that grew up in Atlanta, and I was born, in the mid 90s in the middle of a Braves dynasty. So I really can't remember a time when I wasn't a baseball fan. As far as sort of my conversion into, the analytics and the sabermetrics movement, I think, the book Moneyball was the beginning of that. I read Moneyball when I was probably 8, 9, 10 years old, maybe a few years after it'd come out. And that really just sort of opened my eyes, because I'd always been a baseball almanac kid. Like I loved just to sort through and see who are the home run leaders for each team and who has the most hits and all that stuff. But then it became, who has the best on base percentage by year, so I was still able to retain the love of stats. It was just the stats that I love changed a little bit. I'd always been, making video, editing video ever since I was a teenager. And like I told you, I've always been a baseball fan my whole life, but it wasn't until I finished college that I started to marry those two passions. And I started the Foolish Baseball channel and started really making, video content about baseball. And here I am now about 4 years later, 4 years doing this full time. And I'm just so thankful that I decided to marry, the two hobbies that I loved. I love baseball and I love making videos.
That's absolutely perfect. I was like you as a kid too. I'm getting into the stats as well, and I really do. And I enjoy looking up all the baseball cards. Like I enjoy going to all the stadiums. Like I've hit 23 out of 30. Like I'm trying to do all of them. It was always my goal when I was small.
I started making baseball bits, which is what I do now. And, 15-minute video essay about, with the goal to make sabermetrics analytics entertaining, accessible for the YouTube audience. And I made the first couple of them. They got a couple hundred views. And then eventually I made one about Justin Verlander. And that was the breakthrough for me because in the span of a week, 100,000 people watched it, including Justin Verlander, who tweeted about it. And that's what sort of set me on. I mean, I was slowly growing, so, add a few subscribers here and there. And then that sent the whole thing out of control. And I mean, a few months after that, I quit, my part-time job I was working to pursue, Foolish Baseball, Baseball Bits full time. And a few months after that, I moved out from my parents' place. And a few months after that, I was starting to get like some really cool sponsorships with companies like The Athletic. So it all, it's the culmination of a lifetime of baseball fandom and, 10 or 15 years of video editing. But as far as like how it happened pretty quickly for me.
You read my mind because I was going to ask if there was a specific video that set you off. So you already nailed one of my questions.
Yeah, that was definitely it. I mean, very
nice.
Clearly.
No, I mean, it's Justin Verlander. That makes perfect sense. I mean, he's kind of a big deal, but that's awesome that he actually watched the video and stuff and tweeted about it. And then that got you going and everything.
Yeah. And then I remember where I was. I put out the video just a little bit before Christmas. This was 4 years ago now. And I was just sitting on the couch and my whole family was there. We were watching a movie and I'm just, scrolling through my phone and I just see that Justin Verlander has added me on Twitter. So not only, did this, miraculous thing happen, I was able to celebrate it with my family right as it happened. And that was a really special moment, one that I certainly won't forget when I look back on, my YouTube career.
Yeah, I think that's a pretty good highlight, especially since it helped launch you and everything, and especially to celebrate it with family, and that you can't ask for much more than that. So I guess you kind of explain your motivation for stuff too. So speaking of that, like, what do you enjoy the most about doing this? Is it the stuff like the Verlander interaction, just like the daily grind? Like,
yeah, so I would say, I've interacted with some players. It's kind of it's a curious position to be in because I think a lot of the other YouTube guys are more well-versed in player interaction. So for example, the John Boy guys, they know a lot of the players, especially Yankees players, obviously, Draftnik Mark, who's another big baseball YouTuber. I mean, he's got a podcast that he's partnered up with the Mets on. Like they interviewed Max Scherzer. I don't consistently have interactions with that. I kind of have, a few guys that I like and that I, talk to regularly. And I really, to be honest with you, Julian, like I don't mind it being that way at all. So I kind of like, having a few guys that I talk to. But as far as my interest in, really entrenching myself, and forming relationships with these players, it's not actually the highest priority for me. So a highlight for me is definitely just I love the writing and the research component. And for me, a lot of the research comes from not just talking to players, but talking to media people and people in like player development and people in like the analytics scene who know a lot more than me, and taking their ideas and being able to like simplify them and communicate to the general YouTube audience. So the highlight for me at the winter meetings, it's great to talk to a player, but it's also very exciting to talk to, someone who's like a blogger whose work I've read for years.
Yeah, it's really like you put a name to the face, and I could tell you kill the virtual internet scene. So I could kind of understand where you're coming from that sense. And I did watch your winter meetings video, and you did kind of talk about that. How it was a little bit weird for you being in person with all those people, since you're more used to being behind the scenes with a computer, right. And you do obviously a phenomenal job with that. I think you made some really good points about talking to other people, like trying to learn more information. For myself, I don't really have many player connections. I mean, minor league connections I kind of have. So I'm trying to work my way up through the minor league system and then
Sure.
hopefully get to the majors eventually. I mean, I've talked to a few major league guys. Last year I was able to do that, but yeah, it's just the grind. And I could tell you really enjoy what you do. It comes across on your videos as well. Like when you add in the little jokes to like kind of lighten the mood. I guess that's kind of a good way to make it more adaptable for people that aren't fully into the analytics scene, right?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, humor I think is a big tool, and it's like it's not even like you don't have to be funny.
Something else that's really cool I enjoy is your graphics that you put together in these videos. I think that's a good way to draw people in too. Like they're very unique. Like I haven't really noticed anyone else come up with those kind of concepts. Like I was watching the Judge video and there was like 5 or 6 different things I pointed out that were really original to me.
Yeah, thanks. I mean, I definitely had some really interesting visuals in that video in particular. I liked the where I was able to talk about like the spectrum of percentiles as far as like projecting a player's performance and actually having the player in question like move across the screen depending on like how they were doing. And for me, in terms of YouTube, it's very important to have some sort of, you can call it a gimmick, you can call it a theme, you can call it whatever you want, but basically people should be able to mute the video, not hear my voice at all and still know just from what's happening visually that I'm the one who made it. And so I got kind of lucky that I landed on this whole, 16-bit retro video game type aesthetic pretty much from the get-go. Like I've been that format that I landed on 4 years ago, still using now. But it's important to have some sort of, design language because, it helps give your videos a unique edge. And I've, a lot of that is luck that I've just kind of stumbled into, but I'm thankful for it nonetheless.
That's a great point because you want people to identify your videos and you do a great job with that. Like I was looking back once you got off the diamond baseball thing, I noticed that your patterns are pretty similar for the last 3 to 4 years, like you were talking about. So I think that's really important. Now I want to go to some more fun stuff with our Arson Judge. All right, so I want to hear where you were, what your perspective was of the Arson Judge situation, because it was a frantic time. I didn't see too many people because we actually had to go interview Aaron Boone shortly after it, so that really made for an event. But I just want to know how your view was when it was all going down.
Oh man, so it was so weird and the same thing happened to because it happened around lunchtime. So I was out. I had just had lunch. I'd done a lap around Petco just because I hadn't been to Petco. So I was like, all right, let me just go look at Petco real quick. And I was on my way back, walking back to the hotel on the phone with a loved one. And then I start to get like texts like, do you see what's happening? Like, where are you? And I just hop on the Twitter and I see everything that's happened. And then when I get back to the hotel in the media room, it's like the GIF from Community where Don Glover's character Troy arrives with the pizza and the entire place is on fire. And
yeah,
right. If you've ever seen that, that's what it was like. And the fascinating thing, it humanized the error in some ways, but you're there at the winter meetings where it's happening, and then just throughout the day and throughout the rest of the meetings you see John Heyman wandering around in the lobby and you're like, yeah, I mean, what does that feel like you biffed it big time, man. But also, you start to feel maybe a little bit of sympathy. You see a guy who, this is could be a career defining scoop if you were to, get, right, that Aaron Judge is indeed going to the Giants, and you jump the gun and he ends up going to the Yankees a couple days after. But yeah, that just being there at the winter meetings when it happened, that when I think back on this winter meetings, that's probably going to be the thing that I remember the most. And I think it's going to be the thing that the baseball internet remembers the most as well.
Of course, that's the main story. Because the thing is that's crazy, especially as a Yankees fan. Judge was the main story going in, and then it became even bigger because of the mess up and how he was like the main focus, the whole story. Like we saw all the other moves, we're like, okay, what's going on with Judge still? Like there's a lot of things going on. I think it was the most active meetings ever, probably. It was even better than the one in 2019. And our perspective was we were doing a show, and then Sandy read on the screen the news that Heyman had broke, and I was like, wait a minute. because he's done this before in a sense with Cole and the Angels in 19. He was like, Cole's going to go to the Angels, and the Yankees got him. I was like, all right, slow down. But then I saw more people starting to hype it because they didn't have any other sources, and the Yankee people were up in the air. And then when Boone walks in, everyone's like, you have any news for us? And he's like, no, I don't know what's going on. Like he was being completely blind to it, and you could tell he was stressed though. Like the room was so awkward too. Like you could hear a pin drop in there when he walked in. Like it was so crazy. Everyone was wondering if we were going to lose him and all that.
Yeah, that's right. I forgot, because that wasn't it during like his media time or whatever to begin with. So
it was literally right then.
Yeah, I don't know what I would have done if I were in Aaron Boone's shoes, because and the big question is, what did he know that maybe John Heyman didn't know or we didn't know? Like, was he well aware of the fact that the Yankees were still very much in on him, or did he actually believe for a second that they'd lost him and that he would have to like not just comment on it, but comment on it without any sort of preparation? So I think, that really put him in a difficult situation. So for his sake, I'm happy for him that Judge ended up coming back after all that.
I will tell you what, he walked in, like he was like, I don't even want to envision losing Judge. He's like, I'm not going to speculate on it. Like he handled it as well as he could have, I thought, honestly. Like he wasn't going to be like, oh, we lost him for sure. He probably had a quiet confidence that like they weren't out of it, I would imagine, but you could tell he was definitely a little bit shook. Like there's no question. He was definitely a little bit. It was a crazy situation. Just like all the reporters were wondering, like asking him like, what's going on? And he's just like, oh, nothing unusual here.
Yeah. And I will point out that Heyman's record with like Boris clients was, pretty good. 100. Like he was going to get that scoop almost every time. So the fact that it turned out that way was surprising.
Well, Judge isn't a Boris client. He's not.
Oh, sorry. Good point. Yeah.
So that's why he messed it up. The Boris clients, he is 100 on. That's how he got Bogarts. It's how he got Bellinger and all this other stuff. Like he always nails those. Like if it's a Scott Boris guy, Heyman gets it first like 9 times out of 10, and he's usually never wrong.
That's how it goes. I think it was, because it happened at 5 a.m. local when he actually signed. I think it was John Morosi who actually ended up getting the scoop on that. But it was funny because I was there at the bar that night and then went back to sleep and just kind of tossing and turning, woke up at 5 a.m. and checked Twitter, and I was like,
I was up too,
signed by now. Yeah,
I was up for some reason. I don't know why, but I happened to be up. Maybe we had the sixth sense knowing that something was going to go down. You know how it is.
Yeah, I didn't know about the element where what was it? Howe was in Italy or something like that, and then where it was going to end up signing, with like a weird time zone element to it. But yeah, it is kind of funny that after all that ruckus that he signed when everyone on the West Coast was asleep.
It was so ironic when you think about it, because there's no way anyone would have gotten that. Morosi was there at 5 a.m. Everyone was dead. Like no one was going to be in the lobby at 5. Like when we walked in there shortly after, there was still barely anyone in there. Like we got there like an hour after it happened, probably like as fast as we could. Obviously, frantic, like emergent situation, like he signed, obviously. But the lobby was still like dead. There was still barely anyone in there. I was like, I thought people, but it was so early. Everyone was sleeping for the most part. And Morosi is not the person I was expecting to get it, although he was on top of the Giants and Judge. So I guess we should have been thinking about that the whole time. But it was really crazy. So I did watch the video, obviously, like I've said. And you brought up some points at the end that were interesting to me, but then you also kind of backed off it. So I'm curious here. You said you're unsure if Judge could sustain the long-term success because the height and the weight, we've never seen a player do that. But then you said we've never seen anyone like him either. So I'm really curious how you think his long-term outlook is going to be with that contract.
Yeah, I would kind of compare it a little bit to another signing we saw at the winter meetings, which was the Philly signing of Trey Turner, which is, you sign a guy and you have a pretty good idea that the back half of this contract isn't going to be pretty. But because you're in a certain position, you have a certain window, you make this signing, and you basically, the goal is you just win a World Series in the next few years, and then no one will care. So, do I think this Aaron Judge contract is going to return, good dollars per WAR value over the long term? Like probably not. Like I don't feel great about Aaron Judge playing, what's he going to look like in his mid 30s or late 30s? I don't think he's going to be all that great necessarily.
Right.
But if you win a World Series in the next few years, it doesn't matter at all. And we've seen contracts like that, throughout MLB, like recently. Like I would say a good example of a contract that ended up doing very well overall, even though it had some bad years in there towards the end, would be like the Joey Votto Red Steel, right? Like he delivered so much on the front half of it that even with some struggles in the back half, it didn't really matter. I think that's kind of what you hope for with a signing like this with Judge. He just goes out and has, a few more MVP caliber seasons before the inevitable breakdown happens. And also you hope that you win a World Series within that time frame as well. And, and also the Yankees were back into a tough spot, as if they'd let him go, as I said in the video, then they wouldn't really be the New York Yankees, would they?
Like when you broke down that stretch of when they were playing bad and Judge was carrying them and they still were really bad, like that was really alarming stuff. Like they were basically bottom of the barrel without him. We were comparing them to the Marlins at that point during that stretch. Like when they went like, what was it, like 3-13 or something, or like it was bad. It was like that 14-game stretch, like it was, or 3-11. It was really brutal. It started in St. Louis. I actually went out there too. Like that was kind of the start of it, and they got swept. But that was cool experience still. But I do agree with your assessment of the contracts because none of the long-term deals really work out too well. If you think like none of the 10-year deals have ever fully been fulfilled properly. And Votto's a good example, but even he's declining now.
Yeah. And I mean, when you sign, he signed through like his age 39 or age 40 season now. Like you don't expect to get anything from there,
No.
but the hope is that you get enough in the front half that it makes up for the back half.
I actually think it's interesting because how I kind of envision this thing going is when Stanton's off the team, Judge is going to switch to that DH role. Like that's how I kind of see it going now. So I guess from that sense, if you DH him and preserve him, he'll probably still hit the shit out of the ball, I would imagine, for a long time, as long as he's relatively healthy. But obviously his defense and speed won't be maintained for all those years.
Yeah, I think that's a very good point.
So that will be interesting. So let's stick with some more off-season things. What was the most surprising thing you've seen this off-season?
Most surprising thing, I mean, it seems, fairly obvious, but just the New York Mets, the amount of spending, and they gave us a preview of it last offseason. They were, big spenders. At least we thought they were big spenders last offseason, which actually has turned out to be pretty much nothing compared to what they've done this offseason. But Steve Cohen has realized that that money is not real, and it is a social construct, and you can't take it with you into the afterlife. And if you have more money than you can spend, then you should just try to spend it and see what happens. And
absolutely unreal.
I think, it's interesting because the Correa thing still very much up in the air as we're talking right now, but which too. I mean, that would be the really crazy thing if they get him. But they were in a really bad spot coming into this offseason, in my opinion, because like a Nimmo free agency impending, DeGrom, Edwin Diaz. And what they did is they managed to either extend everyone or get a possibly better replacement. Like, they lose DeGrom, but they get Verlander. Great. They lose Chris Bassett, but they get Kodai Senga. Great. They lose it's like they lose.
I got one for you. Taiwan Walker to Jose Quintana.
Right. Yes, that's what I was looking for. And then the extensions. They extend Nemo. They keep Diaz, and now where they're at right now, they're either going to be probably a little bit better than next year on paper, just because of some other smaller moves they've made, like the Brooks Raley move, for example.
That's a nice move too.
Or they're going to be way better because they're going to get Correa, and they're going to have just like this unstoppable infield, basically. But if you think about where they were at, they they had lost the division to the Braves, who were going to return everyone in the first place based on their, business model, which is very different from the Mets business model.
Yes.
And they were set to get, they were set up to get substantially worse. So the fact that we're talking about them as, with a good chance of being better, like that's crazy. That's a crazy turnaround. And the way to do it, it turns out, is just to spend a lot of money when you have a lot of money.
Yeah, it's like, it's not even George Steinbrenner. It's like well above and beyond what George Steinbrenner would do. The Yankees would never have crazy cap numbers. I know numbers have changed, obviously, but I don't even think George would throw money around like that, honestly. Like, this is just a level we haven't seen before.
So there was an Effectively Wild episode recently where they actually discussed this a little bit. And I think they landed on that if you adjust for like inflation or whatever, or like the share of, the salaries for this team versus the entire league, that this Mets team is maybe second. There's one mid 2000s Yankees team that, comparatively speaking, was about on par. It wasn't even one of the good ones. It might have been like 2005 or 2006 around there when they were like just like a super veteran team like that.
Bad, yeah.
But yeah, that's pretty much the closest, like at least modern comparison to what the Mets have done in terms of their spending relative to the league average.
That's actually really curious. I think you're talking about the era with like Carl Bavano, like Kevin Brown, like Javi Vasquez, Randy Johnson, like all that trash that ended up, all that didn't work out too well. All those overpriced veterans. Yeah, that was a tough era of Yankees baseball. That was not enjoyable.
Yeah, that was the peak of like that was what mid 2000s like baseball front office brain was, which is when you were paying for past performance for sure.
Yeah, that was real. Yeah, that's when they weren't. Yeah, exactly. Thankfully, things have changed since then. To me, the worst contract was the Xander Bogaerts one. I just can't believe he got 11 years still. That one still fascinates me.
I actually really like it. Like I greatly prefer it to the Trey Turner deal, because I think Bogaerts just has a really great bat, and I think they'll be able to move him around the infield as needed.
Yeah,
and we got universal. So I don't want to say I love the Bogaerts deal, just because I think he is getting like a lot more in terms of years and money than we were anticipating.
Yeah,
like
that's where I'm at with
top shortstops are. But I mean, I feel like he, compared to a lot of these free agents, like feels pretty safe to me. So I actually disagree. I think the Turner one is a little bit more nerve wracking. But again, the gambit they're playing there is, if they win a World Series in the next few years, who cares?
Right. You know what? That's a good point, because Turner relies on his speed. I like the Turner contract because I think he has longevity, but I guess if he loses his speed, then what does he really have? I mean, he's still a good contact hitter and he'll hit the ball well, but he's not as valuable if he can't run and his defense declines. And I think there are some questions with him defensively already, so I could see why that might be problematic. Obviously, Bogaerts' defense is not great either, but if they switch him, maybe it'll improve.
Yeah, and Bogaerts actually graded out pretty well last year on at least the stat cast outs above average. So that gives me some hope. And, and as you said, like with the Tatis situation being what it is, like there are a lot of options as far as positional flexibility for either of them.
Yeah, so I'm going to go back down the Yankees path and Josh Donaldson. So you actually thought he was going to have a good year. And, I'm not as surprised as you would think, because when I saw the trade, I can't say I liked it, obviously. I thought it was a really weird trade. I didn't think it made a lot of sense. But I did what you did. I looked at the Baseball Savant page. I was like, okay, like the numbers look decent here. I'm like, maybe he can hit all right. And his defense is actually better than Gio Urshela's, despite what people might think. And that part was really correct. But obviously his bat died. So do you think there's any chance he can get it back together? Or you think the age just completely got him?
That's what I really think the age got him. I mean, I'll put it this way. So in 2021, his strikeout rate was 21% and his walk rate was 13.5%. And then in 2022, his strikeout rate went up 6%. So that's to 27%, which just doesn't typically happen. And then the walk rate fell as well. So it went down to 9.9%. So that's a decrease of 3.5%. So to me, I don't know if that represents aging. I don't know. But just basically any sort of peripheral offensive stat you could count on that was really good in 2021 just completely cratered. I mean, 2021 average exit velocity 94 miles per hour, 94.1. This year 90.7. Like these are numbers that are considered to be fairly sticky and that we don't expect them to change that much year to year. So the fact that massive increase in strikeouts, massive decrease in walks, massive decrease in average exit velocity, massive decrease in barrel rate, like it does not look good for him in the long term. But you mentioned it yourself, at least the defense looks solid.
Yeah, it's like a half good, half bad, but it's not good enough because the Yankees lineup has really struggled and they need to get more production besides Judge, as you pointed out in your video too. Yeah, I'm just not happy with that part of it. I mean, I'd like them to move on personally, but it's tough because the salary is really a tricky situation. So I don't know, but you did well with your other breakout candidates, so I'll give you that one.
Thanks. I appreciate. Yeah, Stephen Kwan, definitely the
That's
highlight
nice
on that one.
Yep, especially since you didn't really have a lot of data to go. Then like, what did you look through? His minor league stuff? Like, they don't really have good advanced stats for the minors. I feel like it's tough to find those sometimes.
Yeah, it was all. I mean, stuff we talked about right now, like the strikeout rate and the walk rate and just reading scouting reports and seeing that people really liked his defense, and he ended up winning the Gold Glove in left field for the American League this year. So when you have a guy who, you can project with a relatively high floor to at least have like a respectable on base percentage and play good defense in the outfield, like that was what kind of led me to make that pick. And the hope was, he would basically be like a luisarraez offensive profile, but with better defense. And that's kind of what he turned out to be.
Yeah, that was a really good one. That definitely stood out to me. I thought your Greg Maddux piece was really cool too, because that 76 pitch complete gamer always is going to stick out.
Yeah, so I've been checking Baseball Reference a little bit lately. So basically the way it works is they have to wait on an update from Retro Sheet, but my hope is that at least before opening day, that the accurate pitch count total will be updated to what my findings were in the video, which and MLB, I'm not sure if you saw this, but so the MLB video says it's 76. Now they've changed it so that the title is like Greg Maddux's 78 pitch complete game, and in parentheses it says "Thanks, Foolish Baseball" or something like that. I'm not even joking. You can look it up.
Wow, that's pretty sick. I gotta look at that.
And then so once I get the update from Retro Sheet into Baseball Reference, which I honestly should probably send them an email about if they haven't seen it by now. I will have, as I said in the video, changed baseball history in the most minuscule of ways, because I would have given Greg Maddux, one extra pitch, one extra ball in his career, and the same for Ryan Sandberg. So two Hall of Famers.
That's crazy. I don't know how that's cool you were able to track, and I guess I don't know how they don't get it right. That's really fascinating.
Well, I think it's based off of scorecards of people that were in attendance, and they must have just happened to miss this pitch. What's funny is that the broadcast itself, so the TV broadcast at the end says 78 pitches, and they were actually the source that was proven correct in this case. Once I was able to get a full upload of the game itself, thanks to the YouTube channel called "This Is Where You Find Baseball."
No, that's really awesome stuff. So I'm gonna go through some candidates this year. Maybe have you checked out anyone of the Yankees? Who do you think could be a breakout candidate, even if it's a prospect for the Yankees, or like a player that we're not expecting big things from? Maybe.
I mean, okay, they're gonna hate me for this, but like,
let's hear it.
You can't count Aaron Hicks out, can you?
Oh God, yeah, I can.
No,
but I guess you can tell me why.
Okay, I like his play discipline, but if I really wanted to pick a more fun one than that, I think Oswaldo Cabrera showed like a lot of fun stuff last year. Like, he hits the ball hard, he plays hard. I really would like to see him like get a consistent spot in that outfield and just kind of like move him around as like a good utility guy as well. So he definitely interests me a lot. Obviously, the rotation is stacked. There's no one in the rotation you could even consider a breakout, because they've all had, good seasons in the past. They've got a reliever in there. I'm trying to see if I can find him, because I want to double check on his name real quick. Greg Weissert.
Yes, Weissert. Yes.
Yeah. I've heard a lot of talk, a lot of rumblings. He pitched 11 innings for them last year. I'm not sure if he'll start the season in the big leagues, but he could be sort of the next. Hey, the Yankees have this like no-name reliever who has like a great ERA this year. I think he may be the next in line for that.
Well, he actually has really sick stuff, and he's even been on Pitching Ninja before, as you saw. The problem is his command was all over the place, but it's his first time. He only threw 11 innings. It's a small sample size. He definitely has MLB stuff, so that would be an interesting one to see come to fruition. He was like one of the best. I think he was their best reliever in the minors last year. He was that good for them in AAA. Unfortunately, I haven't really got to watch him. I'm hoping I can do it next year, but yeah, that's a cool one. Oswaldo Cabrera is fun. People do enjoy that. There's the big debate is if he's going to actually be the starting left fielder, or if they are going to end up moving him around. I mean, I would prefer to move around role too, but if he has to start in left, I don't think it's the worst thing in the world. No, I don't think it is either. I mean, I look at like my Braves, for example, they've got it kind of bad in left field. Like it's I've seen
for a competitive, like trying to be like maybe the best team in the National League type team. Like it's a little bit of Eddie Rosario, a little bit of Marcell Ozuna, a little bit of Jordan Luplow. Like I would much rather have like Oswaldo Cabrera than those guys, at least, for a team that's trying to compete.
I feel like Rosario got rewarded for the World Series, but we kind of knew he was an outlier and he wasn't going to actually like be that consistent. Ozuna, we know a bunch of things have happened. I'm not going to go into all that, obviously. And then Luplow, I know, isn't the greatest, so I could see why you have some trouble there. But hey, at least you got Sean Murphy, so that's cool.
Yeah, that is really cool. I'm really excited about that, even though the trade itself, we'll see about how that works out. I mean, it seems like the real winners of that were the Brewers.
Yeah, that was an interesting trade to me. Like I didn't fully understand what was going on there. Like it seems like the Brewers didn't really give up a lot and they got a decent amount in return.
Yeah, they basically got to swap Reyes for William Contreras, which seems like kind of a no-brainer for them. And then they got stuff thrown in as well. I mean, I don't want to derail the discussion too much, but like the Brewers not that long ago had Omar Narvaez looking like a world beater. Like he was an all-star. And when you bring in a guy like Contreras, who has more talent offensively, but also that same sort of like fringy catcher defense, like they could have him turning into like one of the better catchers in the league for sure. And he's just so young and cost controlled. So that's a huge win for them.
Yeah, and they can DH him too. They need hitters, so I don't think it turns out bad for them at all, honestly.
No, it's a great move.
Yeah, I think the Yankees and Braves are going to be right near the top again, so I think we'll have some good things to look forward to with that. We definitely should. So how about, let's go on the other side. Who are some regression candidates for you on either of our teams, or like anyone you could think that stands out maybe?
Ooh, I mean, so besides the obvious of like Judge, I do have I have some like definite question marks about guys like maybe like LeMahieu and Torres. Torres is such a weird one for me because he's been so up and down throughout his career. Last year, I thought overall he had a good season, but it's hard to project him to be like super good next year. But he's a guy I'm keeping an eye on. He could either, I mean, depending on, when I look at his numbers, like he could show up in a Foolish Bailey as a player I like or a player I don't like. So, it'll take a little bit of a deeper dive in there, but LeMahieu, and then, Trevino on offense, I think could see a step back, although he's still a great defender at catcher.
Yeah, no, I agree with all that 100%. Torres, I think he did have a good season overall, but that 1 month was so bad. Like that month in like a 2-week stretch was like some of the worst ball we've seen. And it was just, he was hitting in the 100s. Like there was no power. Like he was completely lost. But then the other months were really good. So like it was more good than bad, but a lot of people have that bad taste of that bad stretch. And then the playoffs were a little up and down too. So, I overall think they should keep him, though. Like a lot of people want to just throw him in these random trades that don't make any sense. Like I kind of think that's been a little outrageous.
I think the time for that is kind of coming past, and they would not be in their interest at all to move him.
Everyone take care. This was an awesome episode, and Bailey, good luck going forward. And I'd like to see you again sometime. We'll see what happens. I did go to Atlanta when the Yankees played Atlanta. I mean, we'll see where my travels take me. I don't know. I'm sure you go to a few Brave games here and there, I would imagine, but were you at the World Series?
I was in 21. I went to Game 4, which was a pretty amazing game. That was the back-to-back Swanson and Soler. This year, I didn't go to too many games this year, but I nailed the games I went to because I saw Ohtani. I saw the game he started because the Angels came to town. I saw when they swept the Mets. And I saw the one playoff game they won. So I did pretty well on that front. Yeah.
Yeah, I got to see a lot of Volpe at Somerset last year. So that was my best thing probably. And now this year I'm hoping Dominguez starts there so I can get to capture that growth. So that'll be fun. Yankees AA is cool, but Bailey, thanks so much. I'll keep you posted on everything.
All right. Thanks.
Have a good one, bro.
You too.